"You'll never see it coming," John whispered to Max, his voice barely audible over the wind. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed was deafening. Max, his loyal K-9 partner, lay motionless on the cold ground, his eyes glazed over with pain and fatigue. The medics tried everything to revive him, but it was no use. Max wouldn't budge. They'd been through hell together, and now John was facing the hardest challenge of his life. He had saved lives in the past, but this was different. This wasn't just another mission. It was his best friend, his family. His mind raced as he knelt beside Max, his fingers gently brushing the dog's fur. He had learned something in training that might work, but it seemed impossible. It was a code, a secret only those who served together knew. A code that ran deeper than any battle or command. John's hand trembled as he looked into Max's eyes. "You've always been there for me, buddy," he thought. "It's my turn now." He cleared his throat and whispered the words. They were simple, just a few words strung together, but they held power. Words no one outside their unit would ever understand. Max's ears twitched. John froze. He had said it. He had said the code. A moment passed, then another, and then, as if on cue, Max's body shifted. His tail gave a slight wag. Slowly, he lifted his head. For the first time in hours, Max looked at him with a spark of recognition, as though he had heard something only he could understand. The tension that had been building in John's chest began to ease. Max's eyes, once dull with pain, were now filled with a renewed energy. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, John felt hope. The dog was listening, and in that moment, John realized something bigger than just a mission was unfolding. This wasn't just about saving a life. It was about an unspoken bond, a connection so strong that even the darkest of hours couldn't break it. John helped Max to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. The journey ahead would be tough, but they were in it together. Max was ready, and so was he. As they stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next, John couldn't help but wonder, what had the code really unlocked? What was waiting for them on the other side of this? Whatever it was, he knew one thing for certain. They would face it together. The world around them might be silent, but their bond spoke louder than anything else. Max's body shifted slightly, his eyes no longer blank but focused. John's heart skipped a beat. The code had worked. The unspoken connection between them, stronger than anything he could describe, had bridged the gap between life and death. As Max stood, shaky at first, he looked to John as if asking, "What's next?" John smiled, though the weight of the situation was far from over. The storm had passed, but the mission wasn't done. The unit still needed them. They still had a purpose. John rubbed Max's head, feeling the dog's breath steady. The dog was back. Together, they were unstoppable. They walked back to the team's makeshift camp, John's mind racing. What had happened in that moment? It was more than just a code. It was like the words had awakened something deep within Max, something John couldn't quite place. He couldn't shake the feeling that Max's recovery was a sign. There was more to this bond than he understood. The night was colder now, but the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like an invitation. The team was relieved to see Max back on his feet. But John couldn't focus on their congratulatory remarks. He kept looking at Max, trying to piece together what had happened. Was it just a coincidence? Or had the code actually done something more? The rest of the team prepared for the next move, but John stayed by Max's side. He wasn't ready to let go of the feeling that something was off. Max had heard the code, reacted to it, and now he was back. It didn't make sense, but it felt right. As the team made their way through the rugged terrain, John couldn't shake the thought. What else was waiting for them out there? The world around him felt quieter now, as if the mountains were holding their breath, watching him and Max. The next day, after hours of traveling, they found themselves standing in front of a strange, unmarked building. John's instincts told him it wasn't just an ordinary structure. Something about it felt different. Max, still walking beside him, stopped suddenly. His ears perked up. He stared intently at the door ahead, his tail stiff. John's pulse quickened. He knew Max was sensing something, the same way he'd felt it before. The code had unlocked something else, something more than just survival. Something hidden, something only Max could understand. John pushed open the door, his hand steady on the handle. Inside, the air was thick with history. The room was dark, filled with dust and old equipment. But as they stepped inside, the floor creaked. Max moved forward, sniffing the air. It was almost as if the dog knew exactly where to go. The room felt alive, as if it had been waiting for them. John's heart raced. What was Max leading him to? What had the code awakened within them? This wasn't just about following orders. This was something far bigger, something that would change everything. And with Max by his side, John was ready to find out. The air inside the building was thick with dust and silence. Max moved ahead, his senses sharp, nose twitching as he sniffed the corners of the dimly lit room. John followed close behind, his mind racing. Every step felt heavier, as if they were walking into a place that had been waiting for them, a place that held answers to questions John hadn't even thought to ask. Max stopped in front of a large, rusted metal door, his eyes locked on it with an intensity John couldn't ignore. The dog's body tensed, every muscle primed for action. John instinctively reached out, his fingers brushing against the cool metal of the door. There was no obvious sign of what lay beyond it. No label, no markings, just a door. But John felt it, the sense that this was where the next part of the journey began. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "What are you trying to show me, buddy?" he whispered to Max. The dog's amber eyes flickered toward him, then back to the door. It was as if Max was urging him forward, telling him to open it. John placed his hand on the handle and turned. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a hidden staircase that spiraled down into the darkness below. Max stepped forward, his paws making no sound on the concrete floor, his body leading the way as though he knew exactly where to go. John followed, the weight of the moment pressing on him. The deeper they descended, the colder the air became, and with each step, the feeling of something ancient and forgotten grew stronger. There was a strange energy in this place, an energy that made the hairs on the back of John's neck stand up. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, John's flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. He quickly checked the battery, his heartbeat quickening. He couldn't afford for the light to go out now. Ahead of him, Max stopped in front of a large stone wall, his eyes fixed on a small crack in the rock. John could hear his own breathing in the stillness of the room. The crack in the wall wasn't just an ordinary crevice. It was something more, something that felt intentional, like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Max sniffed the crack, then looked up at John with a look that seemed to say, "This is it." John knelt down, his fingers brushing the edge of the crack. He could feel a faint warmth coming from it, like the wall was alive. It was then that he noticed the markings carved into the stone, faint but unmistakable. Symbols. Symbols that mirrored the code he had whispered to Max. The same code that had brought them here. "What is this place?" John muttered under his breath. Max let out a soft bark, as if to answer him, then nudged the wall with his nose. John followed his lead and pushed against the stone. With a low rumble, the wall shifted, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. John's eyes widened as the room came into view. It was filled with ancient artifacts, but the most striking thing was the center of the room, a pedestal on which rested a small, intricately carved box. The box was covered in the same symbols John had seen on the wall. It was as if this entire place was built to guard it. John felt a surge of excitement. He had no idea what was inside that box, but he knew it was important. Something inside him told him that this was the key to everything. As he reached out to touch it, Max let out another bark, this time more urgent. John hesitated, his hand hovering above the box. What was Max trying to warn him about? What was this box hiding? John hesitated, his hand still hovering above the carved box, the weight of Max's warning echoing in his mind. Max, standing by his side, growled low, the sound vibrating in the quiet room. The dog's amber eyes were locked onto the box, a mix of caution and understanding reflected in his gaze. It was as if Max knew something John didn't, a truth hidden within the box that wasn't meant to be uncovered just yet. But the pull to open it was irresistible. John felt an undeniable connection to it, a sense that whatever was inside could change everything. He slowly withdrew his hand, feeling a wave of uncertainty flood over him. What if Max was right? What if the box was more than just a treasure, more than just a key to the mystery? What if opening it triggered something they weren't prepared for? He looked down at Max, who was still watching him intently. The dog's posture was tense, alert, but there was a calmness to it as well, like he trusted John to make the right choice. "We'll take it slow," John muttered under his breath. Max's ears twitched, and for a moment, it felt like the world stood still. The silence was thick, filled with anticipation. After a few moments, John carefully stepped back from the pedestal and scanned the room once more, his flashlight flickering slightly in the dim light. The chamber felt ancient, like a forgotten place that had been untouched for centuries. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and the more John looked around, the more he felt that he wasn't just standing in a room. He was standing on the edge of something much larger, something that had been hidden for a reason. His mind raced, but he couldn't shake the feeling that opening the box would answer more than just the questions he had. It might reveal things they weren't ready to understand. Max, still vigilant, moved away from the pedestal and began sniffing around the room. His tail swished slowly, his body moving with purpose. John followed, watching as the dog circled the room, sniffing the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Max's movements seemed deliberate, each step filled with meaning. It was as if he was searching for something else, something that would shed light on the secrets of the room. John's thoughts swirled as he looked at the markings on the walls, the strange symbols that seemed to match the ones on the box. What was the connection? And why was Max so insistent on keeping distance from it? As if on cue, Max stopped in front of one of the walls, his nose pressing against a crack in the stone. John knelt down beside him, his heart pounding in his chest. There, barely visible in the dim light, was another set of markings, different from the ones on the box, but unmistakably connected. The symbols seemed to form a pattern, a map or a code, but it wasn't one that John recognized. He reached out, tracing the symbols with his fingers, feeling a strange warmth radiate from the stone. It was as if the markings themselves were alive, reacting to his touch. Max barked sharply, pulling John's attention back to the pedestal. The dog was staring at the box again, his body stiff with alertness. It was clear that Max wasn't just warning John. He was waiting for something. Something more than just the box. Something that could only be unlocked when the time was right. John looked back at the markings on the wall, then to the box, and finally to Max. He felt a surge of determination. Whatever the truth was, they were in this together. He wasn't going to rush it. Not yet. But the pieces were coming together, slowly, carefully, and soon enough, the answers would be within reach. John stood in the center of the room, his thoughts swirling as Max continued to sniff around, his instincts guiding him through the shadows. The dog had made his way back to the pedestal, circling it carefully, his eyes never leaving the box. John could feel the tension building once again, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was something else. Something like understanding, as if the answer was just within reach. He knew the dog was waiting for something more, something beyond their understanding. He walked over to the wall where Max had been inspecting the crack. His fingers traced the strange symbols, feeling their warmth pulse under his touch, as if they were reacting to his presence. John's heart raced. He could feel the connection between the symbols and the box now. It wasn't just a random set of markings. This was intentional. These symbols were a key, a map that would unlock something greater than just the room they stood in. As John examined the wall more closely, he realized that some of the symbols matched the ones on the box, but there was one crucial difference. One symbol was missing, as if it had been intentionally erased. He frowned, his mind racing. Why would they leave one symbol out? What did it mean? Max barked sharply, breaking John's train of thought. The dog was staring at him again, his eyes filled with determination. There was no mistaking it now. Max wasn't just waiting for John to make a decision. Max had already made his own. With a sudden burst of energy, the dog ran toward the pedestal again, his body poised for action. John followed, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through his veins. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew it was time. He reached out toward the box, his hand shaking as he lifted it from the pedestal. The moment his fingers made contact, the room seemed to shift. The air grew thicker, the warmth from the symbols on the wall growing more intense. John's heart pounded in his chest as he held the box in his hands. It was lighter than he expected, but the weight of its significance was undeniable. He turned it over carefully, searching for the missing symbol. His eyes narrowed as he spotted something faintly etched along the bottom of the box. A small, almost imperceptible line. It was the missing symbol, hidden in plain sight. As soon as he touched it, the entire room seemed to come alive. The walls vibrated with a low hum, and the floor beneath his feet shifted. John stumbled, his grip tightening on the box, but before he could react, Max barked loudly, his body trembling with excitement. John's eyes widened as he looked around the room. The markings on the walls began to glow, and the crack in the stone wall widened. Something was happening, something beyond their control. The room seemed to breathe, pulsing with an energy that John couldn't comprehend, but he didn't need to understand it. Not yet. What mattered was that the box had unlocked something. The code, the symbols, the mystery, they were all connected, and now they were ready to reveal their secrets. Max's bark echoed through the chamber, and John took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. This was just the beginning. Whatever was coming next, he knew they were ready. They had come this far together. Nothing was going to stop them now. The walls trembled as the crack in the stone widened, revealing what lay beyond. John stood frozen, the box still in his hands, its surface now glowing faintly. Max, his loyal canine, barked excitedly, his tail wagging with a new sense of purpose. The room seemed alive, pulsing with a strange energy that John couldn't explain. As the crack opened further, the air grew thick with anticipation. It was as if the very space around them was holding its breath. John slowly stepped forward, drawn toward the opening. Max was already ahead, his paws light on the ground as he navigated toward the new threshold. John's heart raced, the adrenaline coursing through him. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else, a deep sense of connection, as if everything they had experienced up to this point had led them here. He glanced down at the box, still in his hands, its markings now brighter than ever. Whatever was inside it had triggered this, and John could feel it in his bones. This was the moment that would change everything. He moved closer to the crack, his flashlight illuminating the passage ahead. The narrow tunnel that stretched out before them felt endless, but John wasn't afraid. He had Max with him, and together they had faced far worse. They had survived what most would call impossible. This wasn't different. This was their time. As they stepped into the tunnel, the atmosphere shifted again. The walls were etched with more symbols, some familiar, others completely foreign. The symbols on the walls mirrored the ones on the box, forming a pattern that John could almost make sense of if he concentrated hard enough. Max's sharp eyes scanned the tunnel, his senses alert as always. The deeper they went, the more John felt the presence of something ancient. It was like walking through history itself, stepping into a world that had been hidden for centuries. The air smelled of earth and stone, untouched by time, and the silence around them was almost sacred. They walked for what felt like hours, the tunnel twisting and turning, but John didn't feel lost. He felt guided, as if they were being led towards something greater, something waiting for them at the end of this journey. Eventually, the tunnel began to open up, revealing a large chamber. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, much like the one they had found earlier, but this time, it was different. This pedestal was more elaborate, its base carved with intricate designs. Atop it rested a glowing orb, radiating a soft, golden light. Max moved ahead, drawn to the orb, and John followed. The moment Max touched the pedestal, the room seemed to come alive. The orb pulsed, its light growing brighter with each passing second. John's breath caught in his throat. This was it. The answer they had been searching for, the secret they had unlocked, was right in front of them. As Max sniffed the orb, John reached out, his fingers brushing the surface. The moment he touched it, the chamber filled with a low hum. A voice echoed in his mind, distant but clear. You have come to awaken what was lost. The time is now. The voice faded, but the words remained in John's mind, resonating with truth. This was no coincidence. This was their destiny. Max, his ears perked up, turned back to John, as if confirming the message. The orb's light began to dim, leaving a soft glow around the pedestal. John stood still for a moment, absorbing what had just happened. The answers they had sought were here, but now a new question arose. What would they do with this newfound knowledge? What path would they take next? With a deep breath, John knew the journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. John stood still, his hand still resting on the orb. The low hum that filled the chamber was soothing, yet it carried a weight, an ancient promise. Max, ever watchful, sat beside him, his eyes reflecting the soft glow from the pedestal. The voice that had echoed in John's mind still lingered, its message clear and undeniable. You have come to awaken what was lost. The time is now. John's heart raced, but it wasn't fear that drove his pulse. It was something deeper, a sense of purpose that connected him to this moment, to this place. The orb pulsed again, this time faster, as if reacting to John's presence, to the realization that whatever had been hidden for so long was now within reach. The chamber around them seemed to shift, as though the very walls were responding to the energy being released. For a long moment, John simply stared at the orb, absorbing the gravity of the situation. His mind raced with questions, with possibilities. What was it that had been lost? What was the truth that had been buried all this time? And why had he, of all people, been the one to uncover it? Max let out a soft whine, as though urging John to take the next step. The dog's instincts had always been spot on, and in that moment, John knew what he had to do. Slowly, he lifted the orb from its pedestal. The moment his fingers made contact, the room brightened, the hum growing louder, resonating in his chest. It was as if the orb had recognized him, had chosen him to unlock whatever lay hidden within. John felt a surge of energy, but it wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something spiritual. The air around him seemed to pulse with potential, and he could almost hear whispers in the distance, as if the walls themselves were speaking to him. The time is now, he whispered to himself, the words heavy with significance. The chamber began to transform before his eyes. The walls, once solid and unyielding, now seemed to ripple, revealing hidden pathways, doorways that had been sealed for centuries. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, illuminating the way forward. John's eyes widened in awe. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. He couldn't turn back now. Max stood up, his ears perked as he moved toward one of the newly revealed doorways. Without hesitation, John followed, the orb still glowing softly in his hands. As they moved deeper into the newly revealed passage, John felt the weight of the past and the future pressing down on him. The room had given way to something much larger, something that had been hidden for a reason. The answers he had been searching for were within his grasp, but so were the risks. Whatever lay ahead, John knew that he and Max were ready. Together, they had faced the unknown and had come out stronger. This next chapter would be no different. The hum in the air grew louder, and the further they went, the more John felt that they were not just uncovering secrets. They were rewriting history. The doorway ahead beckoned, and John stepped forward, Max by his side, ready to face whatever came next. John and Max moved deeper into the passage, the soft glow from the orb casting shadows on the ancient walls. The air around them felt alive, as though it had been waiting for this moment, waiting for them to step into the unknown. Max walked ahead, his body alert, his eyes scanning every corner. John's pulse quickened with each step, the weight of the orb in his hands a constant reminder of how close they were to uncovering something far bigger than they could have imagined. As they approached the end of the tunnel, John noticed a door, hidden in the stone, barely visible. The symbols on the walls seemed to converge at this point, pointing toward the door as if urging them to continue. Max stopped in front of it, his ears perked, his body tense. The silence in the tunnel grew thick, the hum from the orb now a steady pulse. John felt a strange sense of clarity, as if everything had led them here. With a deep breath, he reached out to touch the door. The moment his hand made contact, the door shuddered and slowly began to open. A soft light spilled out from the other side, illuminating the dark passage. Max stepped forward, his paws silent on the stone floor. John followed, his heart racing. The room beyond was vast, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. In the center stood a pedestal, much like the one they had seen before, but this one was different. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, as if it had been waiting for them for centuries. Atop the pedestal was a large, ancient tome, its cover worn and faded. The moment John stepped into the room, the air seemed to change. It was heavier now, filled with an energy that John could feel in his bones. He moved toward the pedestal, the orb still glowing softly in his hand. Max stood beside him, watching with a steady gaze. John hesitated for a moment, his fingers hovering over the book. What was it? What did it contain? And why was it here? With a steadying breath, he opened the cover. As he did, a rush of images flooded his mind. Images of ancient times, of battles fought, of secrets long buried. The book was more than just a record. It was a key to understanding the past. The truth was within reach, but John felt something else too. A sense of responsibility. This was more than just knowledge. It was power. He had come this far, but now, standing in the heart of this hidden chamber, he knew that what he chose to do next would change everything. Max barked softly, as if urging him to continue. John looked down at the dog, his loyal companion, and nodded. They had come too far to turn back now. Slowly, he began to read, the words of the ancient tome unfolding before him like a map to the past. The secrets of the world were being revealed, and John realized that the journey was far from over. It had only just begun. As John turned the pages of the ancient tome, a sense of awe washed over him. The words, written in a language that seemed almost familiar yet foreign, seemed to pulse with energy. The deeper he read, the more he realized that this was not just a book. It was a record of history, a chronicle of events that had shaped the world in ways no one could ever have imagined. Max, still standing by his side, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. The dog's sharp eyes never left the pages, his body still as a statue. John's fingers traced the text, trying to piece together the meaning of what was written. The language was complex, but there was a pattern to it, a rhythm that John could almost feel in his soul. The more he read, the more the words seemed to unlock hidden memories, forgotten truths. The book spoke of a hidden lineage, a line of guardians who had kept the world's secrets safe for generations. It told of a time long past when the balance of the world was in danger, and how the guardians had stepped forward to protect it. John could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. This was what they had been called to do. Max had been there to guide him, to show him the way. This was their purpose, their destiny. As he read further, the book spoke of an ancient artifact, a key that could unlock unimaginable power. The key had been hidden for centuries, scattered across the world, waiting for the right person to find it. And now, John realized that person was him. The weight of the moment hit him all at once. The world they knew was on the brink of something vast, something world-changing. The key was within his reach, but so were the dangers that came with it. John's mind raced as he turned the pages, his heart pounding in his chest. What was the next step? How could he possibly be ready for something this enormous? But even as the questions flooded his mind, he knew one thing. He was no longer alone in this journey. Max was with him, guiding him every step of the way. The dog's steady presence had been a constant since they began this adventure, and now, more than ever, John knew they were a team, bound by something deeper than fate. As the last page of the book turned, a new chapter unfolded before him. The final words seemed to glow in the dim light of the chamber, their meaning clear now. The time is now, it said. The key has been found. The world is yours to save. John looked down at Max, who met his gaze with a silent understanding. Whatever came next, they were ready. They had unlocked the secret, But the real challenge was just beginning. The answers were out there, waiting for them, and together they would face whatever lay ahead.